Hi, folks. Welcome to the show. Um, this is my second weekly show in this series, just to explain what these shows are all about. Um, in 2003, I met a multi-dimensional being who took me through a learning process where I learned a lot about energy and about the nature of the universe. In fact, I learned so much about the multidimensional universe, the evolutionary journey of the soul, the mechanics of creation, construct of the soul. Um, I learned about holographic reality and how that works, how energy works generally in the universe. And I came to learn that everything was about energy, vibration, and frequency, and how they work, and the harmonics of that, and how they work together. And during this journey, in 2006, I volunteered to be conscripted into a grid keeping program where I was taught how to grid keep, and did grid keeping for 8 years. Then in 2014, I was told that our grid keeping work had been successful and that I should now go and explain to everyone else what I'd been told and what I was taught. So I've been doing that, and I have a course that I call Bioenergy, Mechanics, and Spirituality. Now, when I hear the word spirit, I think of energy, because that's what spirit is. It's energy and how energy works. And basically, we've been lied to about everything on this planet. So learning about what I learned boggled my mind, and it took me a long time to accept it. But what I really appreciated about it was that it forms a holistic whole. And it teaches you about many, many different things. So I've run this course, and many people who've been doing my course are now doing a follow-up series, which these videos are all about. And these videos are about how to make what I teach as energy, how to turn it into a practical daily way of living, and how everything we think, feel, do, say, what our values and standards are and attitudes are energy. And one of the things I learned about was about time and space and timelines and how they work. So we'll get into that some other time. But having said that, we can change the trajectory of the timeline in which we experience our reality by our thoughts, words, our thoughts, emotions, words, actions, our standards and values, and so on. So this is what these videos will be all about. Hi, Dolores. Delora. Ah, that's a new one. Sorry, I'm just going to change some of my settings there. Yep. So what I'm doing really is teaching how to make the energy teachings that I teach practical and workable. And in the last session I did, my first session, I spoke about how we can collapse the wave of energy that's coming towards us. And I want to continue that today, but I want to explain more about what I call the 3 pillars of mastery. And they are work together. One without the other is no good. It's no good just to have one and not the other. And the 3 pillars of mastery are authenticity, integrity, and sovereignty. And as we get further into this, I'll explain how they work together, because, as I said, one without the other is no good. And so let's deal with authenticity and what it is. First of all, authenticity, from an energetic point of view, is your unique soul vibration. And everybody has a unique soul frequency, everybody has a unique soul structure. And what makes one soul different from the other, we all have the same soul template, but what makes one soul different from the other are the soul codes that are included in one's soul body, in one's soul fields, if you like, that hold all the information of all the lifetimes we've lived. And those soul codes correspond with our DNA. And on this planet, we have about 10% of our DNA is genetic DNA. The other 80% is called junk DNA because scientists don't know what it is. But the genetic DNA corresponds with our DNA that we are born with in this lifetime, and we get that from our parents. But having said that, that genetic DNA holds a lot of information, a lot of intergenerational and interfamilial relationships, because the lineage that we come from is very, very old. It goes back 243,000 years, the genetic lineage of people on this planet. So we are all a mixture of each other in a sense. And so when we are born, our parents' DNA from the fetus in the womb, the reading of that DNA is then encoded into our souls, and they form part of our soul code structure. And the soul code structure includes the DNA from previous lifetimes that scientists here call junk DNA, because they don't know what it is. But that junk DNA is like a hard drive in a computer. It holds all the information of our previous lifetimes, which is quite an awesome thought if you think about it, that we are very ancient beings and we have had a long lifetime of experiences, in many, many different experiences. And some of us have had experiences in other time-space continuum and in other dimensions. So I'll say that again because I got to notice my internet was unstable, that many of us who've come from other parts of the universe have brought with us our soul codes from those other time-space continuums and other multi-dimensional universes. But on this planet, they don't make any sense because it's very difficult to relate to them, because all the nonsense we told you about who we are and what our capabilities and so on are. But I was on the subject of authenticity, but what I wanted everyone to know that every soul has a unique resonance, has a unique frequency, has a unique structure, and no two souls are exactly the same. And it works the same in all dimensional fields, in all layers of manifest soul bodies. beginning with microbial bodies, elementals, vegetables, animals, fish, birds, and humans. Everything has a unique soul signature or frequency. And this can be likened to, say, the elemental table, which is a table that contains all the elements, known elements on planet Earth, and each one of those elements has a unique frequency. And actually, everything in the universe has a unique frequency. And so to be authentic means getting in touch with who you really are within yourself, with your soul, and understanding that frequency, that resonance that's within your soul, and really understanding who you are, and accepting that and appreciating that and learning to express yourself as an authentic person. Now, unfortunately, on this planet, and I'm not just speaking about you folks, I'm speaking about myself, because I realized when I came into this information that I was an inauthentic person, that I'd been taught to play a certain role, yeah, and I was being somebody that I was taught to be instead of being the person that I really am. So I mused about this a long time, and I spoke with my higher dimensional self, and I said, well, what do you suggest in terms of finding out who I authentically am? And he suggested that I do what is called a soul regression, and that I should go back and try to remember everything about myself from the day I was born, which for me at the time seemed an impossible task, because I could hardly remember anything that happened to me before the age of 7. So trying to remember who I was when I was born seemed impossible to me. But anyway, I took up that challenge, and it's also called by some people connecting with your inner child. So I did this soul regression, and I started to remember from the age of 7. I tried to remember events in my life and what had happened to me in that year. So in the age of 7, I remembered my family, who was in my family, where we lived, who our friends were, the church we went to, and the various things that I could remember from the age of 7, the sports I played and who my friends were, how I spent my time, playing with them in the afternoons and playing cricket and rugby and all the sports we played, and what my interests were at the time, which were mainly around sport and what everyone else was doing, like going to movies and trying to just live a life. But then I started to regress from there to the age of 6 and try to remember everything about myself at the age of 6. That was the first year I started school, and I began to remember my very first day at school, who my teacher was, what happened to me when I first went into the classroom. I remember her name was Miss Lombard, which is quite remarkable that I remembered her name, because I hadn't seen her since for about 50 years. And I started remembering the names of my classmates and what my first lessons were when I was 6 years old. And then I started to remember the environment I lived in, and the school that I went to, and the playground I went to. And I remember things like the pine trees around the playground and the grass and the playing fields and the buildings around the school, and all kinds of little different things. And at that stage of my life, before the age of 6, before I went to school, my best friend was my pet dog. And his name was Pal, and he was a Brindle Bull Terrier. He used to follow me everywhere that I went. And my first day at school, my mother told the dog that he can't come into the school. And he tried to come in several times, and she shooed him back, and then he sat at the gate of the school waiting for me to come. When I came out of school, he was there, and he did that every single day while I was at school. And I remember little things like that. And then I remember, walking home from school, and et cetera, et cetera. And I went to the age of 5 before I went to school. What was I like? Who was my friends that I played with? Where did I live? What did I remember about my neighborhood? Who were my neighbors? Who were the kids in the area that I used to play with? What were their families? What did I learn about them? And so I began to do this regression of age, and until I got to the age of 1 year old, where I could remember being carried on the back of the maid who looked after me. I had a carer who was who cleaned the house and looked after me, because I came from a family. I was the sixth of 6 children, so I was the last one. And my mother and dad both worked, so they didn't have much time to give me much attention. So most of my attention came from my maid. And so I could remember she would put me on her back with a blanket, as that is the way the Sotho woman would carry their children on their backs, with a blanket. And she had this big safety pin that she used to tie the blanket. And I could remember the smell of her body and the smell of the blanket. I could remember her pushing the Hoover up and down when she was vacuuming the floors. I could remember her sitting me down to eat, and she would feed me what is called in South Africa by the blacks putu, which is starch porridge. I think in America they call it grits. And I began to remember the various things until just before I was born. I remember waking up in a pram, and there was this kind of a sheet over me, a netting sheet over me, and someone lifting the netting sheet, and there was my maid sticking a bottle in my mouth. And so I began to remember so many things about my life at that time. Incredible things like playing in the sandpit when I was 2 years old and talking to another person. And my mother she told me later she saw this, and she asked me who I was talking to. And I pointed in front of me and I said, that little boy. And she said, what little boy? And I said, this little boy. And I was pointing. I remember what he looked like. And she couldn't see him, but I could see him. And then I actually regressed to the stage where I actually remember being born. I remember being in my mother's womb and hearing her heartbeat and feeling this warm, comfortable liquid around me. And then I remember my mother beginning to, the heartbeat changed and the rhythms began to change. And then for 1 minute, I was in this very comfortable, sack of fluid, warm fluid. And then I remember all hell broke loose when her waters broke. And I began to slide down the vaginal canal. And I was pulled out of there by my doctor. And I also remember his name, Dr. Jacobs. And he pulled me out of my mother's womb by my legs, my feet. And then I remember coming out of there, and it was terrifying for me at the time. And I remember that shock of emotion. And what terrified me most was the bright light around me. Because when you're born, you can't actually see, but you're very sensitive to light. And so I had all this bright light around me, and that terrified me. And there was all these people making noises around me, and I didn't know who they were or what they were. And so I went through this. I remembered the birthing process. And for me, that was quite a revelation for me to actually find out who I am and to get back in touch with that authentic baby that was born on this planet and then was entered into a system that tried to change and mold this baby into something that he wasn't. And I remembered that through most of my life, I was this fairly authentic being until I completed high school. And then I had to get a job. Well, first I got conscripted into the army, did my army training, and out of the army training, I had to get a job. And so I got on the treadmill and began, a working life where I had to conform. And the biggest deterrent to authenticity is conformity. And I discovered in my own life what had changed me was my trying to live up to other people's expectations and trying to conform to what I was told, to what was expected of me. And so my persona changed, and I became another person who was acting out a role that had been pre-scripted for me. And I was conforming to that role. And so I became this other person. And my whole life changed. And I changed. And I became very confused spiritually. I had no idea. And then I went through the spiritual journey for a long time of trying to discover who I am. But I find it very hard to do that. But it's very important that you learn that you are not the person who is acting out your life according to others' expectations and to their script. And learning to accept who you really are and expressing that authentically with other people is very, very difficult. Because when I woke up and I began to express who I really was, instead of conforming to other people's expectations, I got a lot of pushback from people. They didn't like the fact that I was changing. That they didn't like the fact that, that I was having these experiences, and it was demanding of me my attention, and it was demanding of me that I be faithful to who I really am, and to begin to express that. And as I did that, I got all this pushback. And at the time, this was after 3 years of 2003 to 2006, I was then conscripted as the grid keeper. And to do my grid keeping work more effectively, I had to move from Cape Town to Johannesburg, because just outside of Johannesburg, there's a Q site, and my grid work would be more effective if it was near a Q site, because I could feed my energies into that Q site. And I've done a course on grid keeping, so if you want to find out the details, you can find it on my website. But having said that, one of the things that was required of me in order to do the grid work effectively was to learn to be authentic and in integrity and to be sovereign. Now, and that's very, very difficult. The next thing, I'll explain more how sovereignty and integrity and authenticity work, and that'll explain more in detail. And then the next thing I had to learn was to be in integrity. And to be in integrity means to be in resonance, co-resonance with who you really are. So once you discover who you are, you must act accordingly. But I realized when I woke up that I wasn't in co-resonance with who I really was, and that I had standards and values that didn't resonate with who I really was. Because I remember as a child, I was a very loving, kind, happy boy. I was very joyful, full of spirit. I had a lot of courage. I had a lot of, you know, ways about me. I didn't lie, didn't steal, didn't. And over the years, I'd learned that it's okay to lie just a little bit in order to get your way. Or it's okay to conceal information from people because it might hurt them. You know, and all these lies we tell ourselves that take away, that that corrupt our authenticity. And so to be in integrity with oneself is to live to the standards and values that you most dearly hold on to. And so in 2006, I decided that for my life, my new standard was going to be anything that is not love is not acceptable to me, neither from me or to me. So I was not going to accept other people's behavior who were acting in an unloving way towards me. It didn't mean that I was going to argue with them or fight with them. I could simply remove them from my presence, or I could simply remove myself from their presence. So I became very energy sensitive, but in more ways than just feeling loving. I actually felt electrical fields around me, and I still do. But you know, it's one of the demands of grid keeping that you try to keep yourself in integrity at all times. Because the way I can explain integrity, if you hit a tuning fork, it resonates the same frequency every time. And so it's that consistency of resonating at your soul frequency that is really what integrity is about. And you can hit different notes of integrity. Now, each note on the solfeggio scale is a different frequency of sound. And all of our standards and values have different frequencies. And if we hold high frequency values and we consistently resonate at those values, they create a vibrational energy response in our soul fields that helps us to interact with the universe in a way that is more cogent and coherent. When we are not in integrity with ourselves, we create vibrational disturbances so that we lose out in our ability to communicate with the universe, and we become alone standing individuals instead of one with all things. So when you are in integrity, there's no such thing as the lesser or greater among us. We are all the same. We are all deserving of the same amount of love, the same amount of respect. And so I apply that not only to humans, but also to animals. And I found it works wonderfully with animals. You know, I've entered somebody's house and I had a large Alsatian dog charge up to me barking, and the owner was screaming because they thought the dog was going to bite me. And I just stood my ground and I looked at the dog, and he stopped in front of me and barking away. And I just let him bark, because that's what dogs do. And I let him bark until he got tired of barking. He turned around and walked away. And the owner said, "That's amazing. How did you do that?" I said, "Well, you know, I have respect for dogs, and I love dogs, and so I just let him know that I was not afraid of him, that I loved him and accepted him, and he stopped barking." And it has that effect with other people. I found it sometimes when over my time of being awakened, that people sometimes come with you with dissonant energies. You know, they're angry and they want to bark at you, you know, and call you names and swear at you. And I just look at them, I think, that's fine. They're sovereign beings, they're entitled to do whatever they wish to do, but it doesn't affect me. I hold my integrity no matter what is happening outside of me. And now we get to the third thing, which is sovereignty. And this is a very difficult one for people to understand, because some people understand sovereignty to mean being like a king or a queen because they're sovereign beings, or it means you live in a country that is a sovereign nation. But sovereignty happens at the quantum level, and it goes all the way through to the alchemy level, to the molecular level, and to the cell level, because each one of those layers is independently sovereign. And if not treated as a sovereign being, then it creates chaos between them. Because what chaos simply is being non-aligned with the universal energy fields. And so sovereignty means that we have to take responsibility for who we really are. We have to take responsibility for how we respond and express ourselves in the universe and towards other people. And it means we have to respect other people's sovereignty as well. Because you cannot be a sovereign being if you do not respect other people's sovereignty. And this is very difficult. This is a very difficult one, because I've spoken to a lot of people who love the idea of sovereignty, but they just found it very difficult to respect other people's sovereignty. They always wanted to interfere with other people, especially children. And I'm not talking about small children, because that's a different topic altogether. Because I believe very much in train up a child in the way he must go, and when he is old, he will not depart therefrom. So we have a responsibility to train our children, but when sometimes the children are old enough where they're no longer children, they're adults, and that's when the relationship has to change, where we have to allow them their sovereignty. And I've seen many parents interfere with their children till their children are grown up and have children, and even when they have their own children, the parents still want to interfere with it. And that's not respecting another person's sovereignty. At some stage, we have to let go of that connection and allow other people to be sovereign, not just our family, but all people. And that's one of the tenets of sovereignty, is allowing other people to express their sovereignty. So you can see there's a pathway to mastery, that is our authenticity, and expressing that authenticity with integrity, holding firmly onto the values that we aspire to and agree with, and then being sovereign with that, and allowing ourselves the right to express that sovereignty and taking responsibility for that, but also allowing other people to be sovereign. Now, unfortunately, on this planet, people have a great deal of problems with sovereignty, because we have so much interference here that people are being interfered with all the time. We've been told what to do, what to eat, what to educate, how to educate ourselves, what clothes to wear, what cars to buy, where we should live, what type of house we should have, what kind of furniture you should have, what kind of decor you should have, what kind of car you should drive, and how you should drive it, and where you can drive it, and so this whole sovereignty has been dispelled from our planet, and learning to be sovereign is a very sacred thing. when I say it's sacred, because everything in the universe has sovereignty. It has a form of self-expression, of independent, of not being interfered with. And this goes according to the law of one, of do no harm, cause no loss, and do not impede the freedoms of other people. And unfortunately, we live in a system of laws where even the basic laws are not adhered to. And, natural law is what the Magna Carta was based on. And the US Constitution and all constitutions on this planet are based on the Magna Carta. And at the same time, they produced a document on the human rights human rights document, and that we all have human rights. But unfortunately, our laws here don't respect our human rights. They don't respect our sovereignty. They don't respect our right and to do as we wish. And so our freedoms are totally curbed here. And so it's very difficult to do it. But my answer that I found is if I do that within myself. So even though I live in this chaotic world, even though I have people telling me what I should do and where I should go, I just simply ignore them. And I do whatever I wish to do and go wherever I want to go and live the kind of life that I want to live. And if people say you can't do such and such, I say, well, why? Who's going to stop me? They look at me and think, well, the police, I'm not afraid of the police. I'm not afraid of the law. I'm not afraid of the structures here. They're just man-made, And then I tell them that I follow universal law. And they find it very difficult to understand what universal law is because it's so foreign to the laws we have here. But having said that, we've been on a timeline for some time that started on the 21st of December 2012. That's when there was something called the stellar activation cycle. And the stellar activation cycle is an alignment of the stars where certain energies come in from the galactic central sun. They start to come through into our conscious awareness. And normally in an ascension cycle, it's a period of 33 years, so 2012 to 2045. That's the window of the ascension period. We have been on a timeline where our frequencies are beginning to raise, our awarenesses are beginning to raise, and also our soul families are here assisting us, because the ascension cycle we are on is not a normal ascension cycle. A normal ascension cycle means the stargates open and people prepare themselves and they go through certain rites, R-I-T-E-S, in order to ascend. And there are many stargates and two sites, and I won't go into all that here. But in a normal ascension cycle, the stargates open, the halls of Amenti, which is a portal between dimensional fields, are opened, and beings can go from one planetary body to another planetary body, or they can go from our solar system into another solar system, or from our within our galaxy, or they can go from our solar system into the universe. But it all has to do with frequency. And if you can attain a certain level of frequency on this planet, you were able to go into the stargates, because the frequencies were the frequencies of your soul, not your body. it's very important to understand that our soul has a frequency that vibrates at a certain resonance. And within that, you have certain soul codes which correspond to your DNA. And if you don't have the soul codes that it will allow your body to go through a stargate, your body won't be able to go through a stargate. So that's kind of how ascension normally works, that people could go into higher dimensional states. But we're on a different kind of ascension cycle where the founders races who originally worked with Earth, because Earth came from another planet called Tara. That blew itself up, and there were 12 fragments of Tara, and Earth is one of those fragments. And so the founders races worked with the Galactic Federation, putting Earth back together again with a 12-strand DNA potential template, and that was 546 billion years ago. So Earth has a long history of development and change, and now we on an ascension cycle which happens every 26,000 years, and so yeah, all this is happening, and it'll put us on a different timeline trajectory, so that Mother Earth, who is also due for an ascension evolution, she's due to move into a higher state of dimensional state. We are being raised, our frequencies are being raised so that we can ascend with Mother Earth. Not everyone will ascend with Mother Earth, but those who are able to raise their frequencies to a level that will enable them to go into a different dimensional state, into what is called the semi-etheric fields, where we won't be as solid as we are now. We will lose some of our physical attributes and will become less dense as beings, and we'll enter into the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensions. So that's where we are. But I hope I haven't been. I hope this hasn't been confusing for you, because there's so much to learn and there's so much I'd like to teach you. But just know that the three pillars of mastery are authenticity, integrity, and sovereignty. And do your own research into all of those and find out how they work. And what will help you in developing sovereign attitudes in life is to learn the attitudes of mastery. And on my website, I've got a whole list of attitudes that you can use that will change your life completely. Attitudes of love, grace, kindness, forgiveness, thoughtfulness, mindfulness, what's the word I'm thinking of now? Well, there are a whole long list of them there. And if you try to make each one a part of your life, that helps to facilitate the progress into a higher state of consciousness. At this stage, I think perhaps I should answer any questions you might have, or any issues that you'd like to raise, or make any comments about what I've said.
I have questions about when you're hearing untruth and people are trying. How do you just walk away? How do you just ignore it, particularly in the political environment?
I think the important thing is, like I said, to understand you are a sovereign being, And what other people do outside of you has got nothing to do with you. It's their business.
Okay.
You hold on to your own sovereignty and say, if you have a different belief, or if you have a different mindset, if you have a different understanding of something, that's fine. That's yours. I don't take it on board for me. We have to really learn to stand in our sovereignty, when dealing with other people, particularly in this crazy world we live in. We're told, like we got hit with that virus that, everyone,
COVID.
everyone went crazy about. And I looked around me and I saw people behaving like I couldn't believe that people were doing what they were doing. They were wearing masks and and unfortunately I had to wear a mask because they wouldn't let me go to the shops if I didn't wear a mask. So I'd take my mask with me, put it on.
Yeah.
And I actually, the first time I went in, I put it on over my eyes so I couldn't see. And I went
So
because we had to have our hands sanitized. And this lady squirted sanitization. She, and I put this mask over my eyes. And she said, but you can't see if you put the mask over your eyes. I said, yes, I don't want to see what I'm going to see. But
yeah.
I was just joking. Also, a good thing is you keep a sense of humor.
Okay.
And when I come across somebody who's like high frequency, anger, I feel a sense of antagonism coming towards me, I just smile and laugh.
Okay.
Because my understanding is I'm a sovereign being, you're a sovereign being, you don't respect my sovereignty, but I respect your sovereignty. If you want to be an idiot, you can be an idiot. That's your business. But don't try to make me an idiot.
That's a good way to look at it. It's their choice if they want to be an idiot. Yeah. Okay. I can deal with it that way because but they try and force so many belief systems on you, and they're not true, and so laughing about it and just going, okay, so many of you are choosing to be idiots, and when you're surrounded by idiots. Okay.
Yeah, I know the feeling because I sometimes get invited to dinners and events, and I go there and I see people around me, and I'm very happy to be among them and enjoy people. But I see some of the strangest behaviors, and when I see it, sometimes they can see me looking at them in a kind of curious way, and they say, well, "What's the problem?" So why are you doing that? Because everyone accepts that being stupid is acceptable and being corrupt is acceptable, but that's not acceptable.
I never thought about it that way, that they accept corruption.
Yeah. And if they want to accept corruption, or if they want to behave in ways which are counter to human growth and development and energy development, there's nothing I can do about it because they're sovereign beings, but I won't take that on for myself. But if they ask me what I think, I will tell them what I think, but I don't expect anybody to believe me because believing is optional. And if people want to believe something, they'll believe it, whether, I don't try to convince people, but what I try to teach is based on science and observable science. And, I've been through many, I've done a lot of research into it. For instance, sovereignty, if you look at the animal kingdom, animals respect each other's sovereignty. And they don't, for instance, they don't have wars. One species might eat another species or hunt another species, but that's the natural way. That's the natural cycle of life.
Yeah.
It's the way ecosystems work. But they don't have an edict each morning that you must wake up, you must go to the water hole, you must drink water, and then you must go eat leaves all day, or you must go eat other carnivores, or you must, the natural world around us can teach us so much about sovereignty, and being respectful towards all other beings. I'm not just talking about human beings, but animals, birds, vegetables, fish, whatever. And what I'm going to be teaching this year is I can't understand why everyone is afraid to have God consciousness. It seems like it's an unattainable goal. Yeah, people don't realize that they are part of God, and what they are expressing when they express their authenticity. Sorry, I've got something in my eye. When they're expressing in authenticity, that is an expression of God. And if we try to hold the same standards and values as God, we will become more authentic, because that's who we really are. We are expressions of God. So it's not an option, in my view, and many people thinking that morality and ethics is an option. In my view, it's not an option. And if we make it optional, we open the gates for corruption. We open the gates for degeneration. We open the gates for crazy ideas and ideas that are self-defeating. And so it's very important that we individually take responsibility for our own authenticity, integrity, and sovereignty. I hope that explained it a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I guess I get caught up in, do we have a responsibility? I mean, obviously, I've been asked, and I've done it for 3 years, a newspaper column on, it's always my truth, my inspiration and I met my higher self when I was 35 years old, and I'm 80 years old now. And
okay.
I earned every one of them. And I feel there's this urge in me. You want to wake people up, and so many of them have no desire to wake up, and so you don't push it. But you continue to put out your truth.
Yeah, and that's all we can do. There's no judgment about who should be doing what and how we should do it. There's just being authentically who you are in all situations, and that changes things, because that resonance that you set up collapses the waves of this dissonance around you. So when you have all this dissonance around you, the mainstream media telling you all these lies, governments telling you lies, people telling you lies, then in your own authenticity, and that collapses the wave. That creates an alternative wave of energy that will collapse their wave. But you have to stand firm in that, because when you start compromising that, you take on board that wave of energy, and that disrupts your own equilibrium, as it were.
Thank you. I didn't start following you till about 3 months ago, but everything I've come across has been absolute truth that I have been brought to. And I literally had a being appear in my hospital room when I was 35, and I've been a seamstress since I was 9, and there were no seams in her gown. I mean, she was an angelic being, and I've literally been led since then. And hasn't been an easy journey necessarily, but it is authentic.
Yeah. And if we resonate together, and we co-resonate with each other on the same frequency, we create a much bigger wave. So
ooh, okay, got it. Whoa. I can feel it. Yeah.
And if we do that on a international level, because there are many, many people out there whose resonance is going up, let's support each other. Let's work to each other. Let's collaborate. Let's build each other up instead of breaking each other down. Let's encourage each other to express more of their authentic self, even if it's different from yours.
Oh yeah, I mean, as I say, there are as many pathways to God as there are people on the planet, and you find a pathway that fills your soul.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's our purpose here, to grow our souls in one way. Yeah. Okay, beloveds, thank you for attending. As you attended, I've got some people who are not on their videos are not on, so they're not showing themselves, but that's fine. And I hope to see you all next week, and much love and respect to you all, and have a great week. See you next time.
Thank you so much.